Greetings, I am Shad, and this is a chair. What? You just think because something's on the wall in prominence that I'm going to talk about it? Well, you would be right. That's a kite shield, and that's what I'm going to be talking about. The first kind of question to ask is the name kite shield. Well, kite shield, it is not a historical term. In fact, we call it kite shield because it looks like a kite, and so kite shield. So a probably more accurate term would be called it a teardrop shield because it's the shape of a teardrop. It's an upside down teardrop, but a reverse teardrop shield. Now again, I don't have any idea if they were called that in history as well, because these are descriptive terms, and so they're sufficient in the fact that when you say them, we understand what shield you're talking about, and so that's why they're important in our current day to know what shields they're using. But as to the traditional name of the kite shield, most likely it was shield, or a shield. The kite shield, in my opinion, seems to be the forgotten shield. I mean, look, it's not forgotten, but it's underestimated. I don't think enough people know how awesome the kite shield is. The things that make me say this is when I look up shields, do my research, and I just like to look up things for fun anyway. When I'm perusing the internet for medieval-y kind of stuff, I find the kite shield to be a very unsung hero in regards to medieval cool things that are medieval and cool. Practitioners of HEMA, when they go to learn sword and shield combat, I often see online that the shield that's focused mostly on is the Skjoldr, the round Viking shield, or indeed the Heater shield, but I've rarely seen HEMA practitioners use the kite shield. Even in documentary series where, they're documentaries on medieval warfare or armor or combat and stuff, the ones that focus on shields, they often only touch on the kite shield very briefly. They'll spend a decent amount of time on the round shield and the heater shield, but the kite shield doesn't get a huge mention, and to me I feel that's a huge oversight, because why? The kite shield is awesome. Indeed, I will even say the kite shield is the king of the shields. Do you disagree with me? Well, hear me out. Let me explain why I say that, because I do believe it. Kite shield, king of the shields. You can clearly see the logic that would have been used in the development of the kite shield. The top of it is very much the same as the round shield, but the bottom, you see it's been extended to cover one's lower body. Is this an important thing, the protection of one's legs? Well, the people of the early medieval period certainly thought so. That's why the kite shield was developed. From my own assessment, I feel this is an important thing as well. You see, when you go online, and you can do this too, when you look up people practicing HEMA or even just reenactors and stuff like that, where they're doing sword and shield combat most often with a Skjoldr, the thing that I've noticed in regards to their training, their fightings and other things like that, and they generally do a really good job. You can find some videos of some very talented people in this HEMA art, which is HEMA meaning historical European martial arts. There's some very talented people out there, and you get to see the skill that they've developed when they're fighting with sword and shield. The thing that I've noticed, the hit that most often lands when someone is using the sword and shield is at the legs, that the strikes are getting in underneath the legs. Now it's interesting, I've seen, there are videos online which try to talk about the techniques of sword and shield combat, and they will say that the legs are vulnerable, but then they kind of gloss over and say you just lower the shield and defend it, and that the round shield is the ultimate shield because it can defend every part of your body. Well, I think the theory is a lot easier to explain than putting it into practice, because when you see people actually fighting and stuff like that, it's hits to the legs that are going, and yes, they should have lowered the shield to defend their leg, but it's rarely ever done. Those are the hits that are passing through their defenses, and I think that sheds light on what happens in history as well, because clearly the people of the medieval period, and this is around the early medieval period, was having that issue as well. The leg is not properly protected with the round shield, so the kite shield was developed. So I actually disagree with the fact that the round shields are perfectly fine. All you need to do is lower them, because again, I think putting that into practice is far more difficult than people think. And even if you have trained to lower the shield, all it takes is an opponent that's a little bit faster than you to get that hit in. What works much better than having to constantly account in combat for protecting your leg with a round shield, what works much better is having a shield that protects it without you needing to do anything. So look at the kite shield next to me, right? And I hold it out in front of me. Look how much this is protecting and covering. And if I was to hold it out at a decent distance, can you even see me? Like, look how much protection this shield is offering me. And when I'm holding it in kind of a fighting stance, I'll be holding it right here. Look at how much protection this offers. Wow, this beast is amazing. So I feel there are heaps of logical reasons that justify the development and use of the kite shield, and indeed that make the kite shield superior just by design than the round shield. So I feel it's superior in design, but you might be thinking, what about functionality, alright? Because you might be thinking that the round shield is superior to the kite shield in just pure function. Well, we'll get to that. But first I want to still look at the design of the kite shield a bit, because of what this extended bottom achieves and does for the person using. Because not only does it protect your feet in combat, it's also to protect your legs when on horseback. You see, before the medieval period, horses were not employed to a very large degree in combat. One of the reasons for this that is largely unknown is the fact that back in the day of antiquity, horses were actually much smaller than what you see them today. And in fact, if you go back far enough, horses, they did not have the back strength to support a person. And so if you're wondering why chariots were used so often in the classical period, this is actually the reason. Horses weren't suitable to ride on, alright? It took specific breeding programs employed by many different cultures to evolve the horse into a beast that you now kind of understand it as in the modern day, and how it was used in the medieval period and later periods of history as an animal to be ridden upon. And so by the early medieval period, these breeding programs and other things like that, the horse actually had evolved a bit, now suitable to ride. And a horse provides such a powerful tactical advantage in combat, especially when employed in large numbers. Shields up to this point were never really made to be used in conjunction with a horse, and so when horses now coming into use in combat, outside of chariots that is, well, if you wanted a shield, there needed to be an evolution in the shield, because if you watch my video on the Skjolder Viking shield, I mentioned that it's an ineffective shield on horseback because it's specifically a center grip shield. You need a shield that's strapped to your arm to have it effective on horseback. But also, you have that vulnerable leg. And there's another thing as well. Horses were first employed in kind of shock tactics, really. You run in, they would throw a lance or a javelin or a spear and run out, or, they got the lance hits and other things like that. And so it was very impact warfare based, alright? So in this method of using the horse in warfare, when you're riding away from your enemy, you needed something to protect at least your back, alright? The round shield can do it to an extent, but the kite shield does it far, far better. The way it's done is that you ride away from your opponent on a slight angle. You don't ride away from them dead on so they can see either side. If you ride away from your opponent on a slight angle, so I'm riding away from you, my opponent, from this angle, all I need to do is hang the shield on my back over here like this, and then as I'm riding away, I've got a decent amount of protection on me, don't I? Size is a good topic to cover in relation to the kite shield, because I've seen kite shields of varying sizes, in fact, and a lot of the advantages and disadvantages that I will be talking about apply very much to the size of the shield you're using. I feel this is one of a good standard size representations of a proper kite shield. You want a kite shield to be big, a decent size, and so if I am to stand on the ground and have the kite shield next to me, you want to coming up to mid, chest height right there. You see, because when you're standing in formation, again, these shields can get heavy when you're holding them out or even just holding them up like that, and so you're eventually probably going to rest it on the floor. But even resting it on the floor, look at how much protection this is offering you. It's a huge amount of protection. It only takes a little bit of elevation, not much strength at all, to hold it up this much, and my whole body is completely protected. It almost offers me as much protection as the Roman scutum, which is the Roman big rectangular shield, incorrectly called a tower shield. The actual name of it is a scutum or scutum. And we know how effectively those shields were employed in warfare. And if you don't know, they were employed to a very, very effective degree. The Romans conquered most of the known world in their day. And I know that wasn't just because of the scutum, okay? But what I'm saying is that those shields were employed to a very great level of effect. And the kite shield, it shares the length level of protection that the Roman shield offers. But everything I've just mentioned there is if the kite shield is the right size. And I often see kite shields recreated by whoever, you see people online and stuff like that. I often see kite shields made way too small. Way too small, alright? Kite shields are a big shield. They're not a heater shield, and so the big mistake, the one that I think I see most often, is kite shields the size of heater shields. So this is my heater shield, right? And often the big mistake that I find people will make a kite shield the size of this, and so it'll just be like this, but with a round top, and that's it, and they call it a kite shield. No. Too small to be a kite shield. In my opinion, that would be a heater shield. To be a proper kite shield, to get all the advantages that a kite shield is supposed to give and what they did give in history and stuff, you need one of the right size. And this is about the right size in my opinion. Now granted, I actually could be on the bigger end of the spectrum, but not by much, alright? And so if the standard is a little bit smaller, I actually don't think they are, but if I'm wrong, because I never discount the possibility that I could be wrong, alright? I've been wrong enough times in my life to learn that I could be wrong in the future as well. But this is how I understand a kite shield to be. This is the size, and with it being this size, you get all the advantages and disadvantages that a proper kite shield should bring. So, and it just looks beautiful, don't you reckon? Kite shields just look awesome. So these are the advantages that you get out of the design of the kite shield, specifically protection on your legs and easy to use on horseback, and again protection from your leg and your back on horseback. The next video we're going to be looking at the advantages you get out of the functionality of the kite shield compared to other shields, specifically the round shield. Thank you for watching and I hope to see you there.